The Hindu has been for the past few days running a series of articles called Learning Deficit, and this is in line with a number of series that we've run in the newspaper this year. Learning Deficit is all about the crisis of primary education in India as it has evolved over many years and as we see it today. The series is structured such that out of the 7 parts, the first 3 parts look at identifying the different dimensions of the crisis that we see in primary schools across the country. The second part, so to speak, of the series, 4 segments to be precise, look at different strategies that policymakers and educators have adopted across Indian states to tackle the crisis in primary education. The various dimensions of the learning deficit, as we call it, refer to phenomena such as dropout rates, teacher absenteeism, a lack of inclusion, that is, some groups have less access to primary education than others. Educators and policymakers have adopted numerous strategies to tackle this, and that includes the right to education, the policy passed in 2009, which aims at bringing in socially and economically marginalized groups into the primary education environment. Our series also looks at phenomena and problems and issues beyond just primary schools. We go one step back and we look at early childhood education, which specialists, even such as neurologists and educators, tell us are the most important years for cognitive development. However, in India, the focus in terms of policy has only been on primary education starting from age 5 upward. So actually, we are missing out on a very important segment of the future generation's learning capabilities. Another dimension that we explore within Learning Deficit is educating girls, and obviously that has a very powerful echo across the country where you see gender imbalances across policy areas. However, no more or in no other sector is it more manifested than in primary education. And we see that because parents themselves tend to discriminate between male and female children, boys and girls, and further teachers in primary education tend to allocate different levels of priority within the classrooms, and similarly we typically see that boys tend to go on to private schools much more than girls do. Girls end up in larger numbers being in government schools. Learning Deficit also explores the way that the education sector in the primary space has developed so far between private and public. What we have noticed is a growing tendency towards students moving from public schools or government schools to private schools. Statistics suggest that learning outcomes, that is the actual abilities imbibed by children and which they're capable of demonstrating, seem to be higher in private schools, and that could partly explain why many parents of families that are even relatively poor are willing and keen, in fact, to send their children to private schools. Nevertheless, public schools or government schools play a very important role in terms of the reach that they have and the broad equity goal that they serve in terms of bringing in students of all different socio-economic backgrounds into the primary education space. Overall, if Learning Deficit has a message, it is this. It is that India has done extremely well in ramping up enrollment rates from the early 2000s until now in 2016, when it is in excess of 96%. However, to take policy and education to the next level, the government and educators will have to think creatively about how they can improve the pedagogy, that is the teaching methods of learning, so that there's no longer a focus only on outcomes in terms of the resources that are plugged in terms of the school infrastructure, although that is important, but also looking at outcomes in terms of actual skills and knowledge imbibed by children which they can demonstrate, and in the future which will serve them as members of the 21st century workforce. We hope you enjoy the series.